Wish you a happy new week as we march into another fun week of 2021. And I wanted to talk a couple minutes about the fact that hoarding impacts, everyone, including you. And at first glance, you may not recognize how that's possible, but if you are a person that hoards, that's impacting your life. If you are a peripheral person that is dealing with someone that hoards, it's impacting your life. And also, there are a lot of peripheral people, in addition to the family members, that see this issue quite frequently. And some of those industries are real estate, HVAC, you might have plumbing, electrician. Um, there are a lot of different people that come across this issue and are impacted by it. And when I say impacted, it can be in a number of ways, from being unable to complete the work. If you happen to be a person that does on site work for people like HVAC or heating or plumbing, could even impact people who are coming in to try and repair a fridge or something like that. And so it's something that does impact a lot of people. You even have people that are organizers who do this kind of work who might not generally deal with excessive clutter, but borderline situations do come up for a lot of people. And the main thing is that I see is that a lot of us want a better life for the person that hoards. And frequently, they are not in a place where they see it as a problem. So while we are trying to connect and get them the help they need, if they don't see that it's a problem, then it can be really challenging and daunting to get them the help they need. Oftentimes, it's that outside force that pushes some sort of resolution in a extreme hoarding situation. It could be someone who does an inspection. It could be property management who discovers there's a problem. It could be someone who is dealing with property that's being condemned. It could be rodent pest control issues. So there's a lot of things that come up in these situations, but the key piece of this is looking at choice versus compliance. And frequently, the outside force is what causes the compliance piece to kick into action. And this typically happens in a forced cleanout scenario where, as much as you would like to have the level of care and concern for that person, you still may have it, but you may have to push the limits really quickly to resolve a situation if it's really extreme. The other part of this is hopefully you are finding people who are choosing to make a change in their life. And if so, that makes the clean out and any of those subsequent things much easier to handle. It can be hard to determine in the beginning what the real situation is. And I've had this conversation with people where you're called in to help resolve a situation, and at first glance, you think you may know who, who the problem is or what the problem is, but then you get in a little deeper and you find out maybe someone is like cohorting, and they each have a different perspective on what is valuable. Someone might hoard vehicles thinking there's inherent value, someone else might hoard paper and trash thinking there's inherent value in there. So even within a hoarding situation, you might find people butting heads over what is actually hoarding. And so it's important to think about the questions that you can ask to ascertain what's actually going on. And if you are struggling with any part of hoarding, if you're a peripheral person, uh, another group I didn't mention are, of course, the firefighters and the EMS and first responders who often are called into a situation and may be the first people that have been called in a very long time. And that is in general where the crisis point can happen is someone fell, they can't get up, EMS is called, they somehow shimmy a gurney into that space and rescue one of the people out of that hoarding situation. And so there is this piece of we don't deal with it until it's at crisis point. And my aim is to have these discussions and questions and roundtables so that we can start talking about this before it's at crisis point. Because if you have ever had a family member land in the hospital for any reason, and then you have hoarding issues on top of it, now you're not only are you dealing with medical issues, now you're dealing with housing issues, you're dealing with your own emotional trauma, drama, their emotional situation, and so it just exacerbates any existing problem. And by not addressing it earlier on, that's also a problem. So it's very valuable to consider if you see a hoarding situation, how would you start addressing it? Can you start addressing it? And the main thing is to remember that despite the situation you may find yourself in, they're all humans. We're all people trying to figure this out. And if you come at it from a human perspective, I think it improves the odds that you will at least be able to have a conversation. Don't get me wrong, you probably aren't going to solve it immediately, but starting with a conversation is a key point in nearly any situation to figure out what your next steps might be. And if you are struggling with that or wondering what to do, please join us in the Hoarding Solution Community. It's a group here on Facebook. I'll put a link in here after the live. And our goal is to be addressing these issues, talking about them, and figuring out what we need to do collaboratively, systemically, to start addressing this issue much earlier on. And just understand that just about it's the same for just about any one of us. If we want a change to happen in our lives, we have to be willing to acknowledge there's a problem, look at ways to address it, and then do the action in order to do that. And that can be a very big struggle in a hoarding scenario. And that overwhelm can exist in a number of ways. And in general, it's when someone doesn't know where to start. Sometimes people will recognize there's a problem, but they're too overwhelmed to even start. So they don't start, they shut the door, they walk away, they go to work, they go visit other people, and so they never address the actual problem. So that's part of the space that is needed, is we need to talk about the problem. Then we need to look at what can we do to resolve it, and then how can we collaboratively work together to make that happen. And there's lots of room for improvement in this conversation, in these scenarios. And, the free group is a beginning point for these conversations. If you're interested in consultations, I have that. I have packages where we can figure out what needs to happen in some of these situations. It's done virtually, and it's a way to have that conversation. It's a place to have it without feeling like you're judged for whatever you're dealing with. Because I've seen it all between pets and rats and other infestations, the smell factor. Sometimes it's not that severe, but other times it is. And often it's in the mindset of, is this actually a problem? And it's important to understand that you can't necessarily jump in and solve the problem immediately, but you can start by having a conversation. And that's where the group comes in. That's where the consulting comes in. And I leave you with this question, and it's one that I would love to see people weigh in on, and that is, there are people that were getting inspections throughout their rental time period. But with the current state of affairs, some of those people have not had an inspection in months. And it's likely that that hoarding has grown astronomically and is out of control. So when we check back in with these people at some point, what are we going to do? Are we going to help them reduce their stuff? Are we going to try to help them remain housed? Or are we going to have some kind of mass eviction situation because we chose to not address this throughout the past year or so? And so that's one of my questions around how are we going to address this longer term, because trauma exists in hoarding, and going into homelessness is not necessarily a solution, but neither is allowing someone to destroy someone else's property. So there has to be some sort of way for us to be addressing this in a bigger way. So those are my thoughts for today. I do invite you to join the Hoarding Solution Community, and I do have a free resource here that I will put in the links or in the comments as well around decision making, because sometimes we really need that decision making piece. So, anyway, I hope you have a great day, a great week, and thanks for stopping by here. And I will see you again next time.